part of the reason why I'm optimistic about this from a Sixers perspective, you mentioned that Paul George can be the 3 here. I think that's absolutely true. And I also think the best way to build a trio is exactly how the Sixers have built it. You have a true guard in Tyrese Maxey, a true wing in Paul George, and a true big man in Joel Embiid there. And I also think, like, while I can see why I would rub people the wrong way, kind of the Paul George mentality in quotes, to me, I'm pretty intrigued by that because there's always been this kind of underlying passive aggression here in Philadelphia for all of Joel Embiid's pairing. It felt that way with Jimmy Butler of a who's the guy taking the last shot. With Ben Simmons, there was this always like stylistic clash for how these guys want to play. Even with James Harden, there was some clash for how you want to play basketball. And like Joel didn't love being a pick and roll type big man, which is what obviously James Harden excels at, and so much isocentric. So I almost am like bought in on this fact that Paul George is not going to be a guy that causes a fuss or is too commanding. And my other point to bring in that I know you can relate to from a Clippers fan, this is a clear upgrade over Tobias Harris, that I cannot exaggerate how much better Paul George is than Tobias Harris. And just that upgrade right there, I do think changes this team. So what would you say to all of that?
Definitely does. I love Tobias Harris personally. Well, I don't know, Sixers fans don't, but I had about a season overall with him as a Clipper, and he was really good in the beginning of that 2018-19 season. Granted, the expectations were nowhere, but Paul George, the only thing I'll say is, yes, I totally agree with you. I think that the trio is perfect. The big wing guard combination, that's ideal. The thing I'll say is when Paul George goes through one of his inevitable shooting slumps because he only shoots jumpers and does not get any easy baskets. Yeah. And when I mean easy baskets, he'll still get some open threes, but I mean like nothing inside the paint, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When he has one of those stretches, he could blame it on I'm not getting the ball enough. That's the only thing I'll warn you about. But that's about it. You're right about I just think he'll be easier to work with in that third option role than some other stars in the league. Like that's why I think Paul George, even with the lack of production sometimes and the excuses that he makes and all this, what makes him, I think, such a coach's dream is like he can do a lot of things well. Like he can work. Any guy that can be in movement and can work quickly off the catch and is that much of a threat off the ball is very fun for coaches. The thing with Paul George is don't expect him to do that much spontaneous cutting, like just out of just him seeing something and going. He's a guy that only cuts really in sets. He literally said on his own podcast, he can't back cut. But it's funny because after he said that, he had the most back cuts of any Paul George season with the Clippers last season with like, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 off the top of my head. So just don't expect him to cut spontaneously, but like as a coach, man, that's a luxury to have someone like that. Much better than Tobias Harris coming off screens and all that stuff. And it's just, it's silky smooth with PG. When it looks good, I mean, you're going to be in awe of what he can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to get into the too big of ripping Tobias Harris, but kind of my outlook on him is so sick of the pump faking out of open 3-pointers to just work your way into a tough contested 2. He's a guy that, like, while you see the smoothness in Paul George, there's none of that in Tobias, that it's very much, even when things are cooking, it's like hitting fadeaways over outstretched arms type action, that type of thing. And my full outlook for him as a player, I feel bad just killing the guy, but he's not good enough to be a primary creator on a team. And he's also not skilled at any of the supplementary skills, that he's not a good enough rebounder. He's not a good perimeter defender. His hips are super stiff when trying to slide with guys. And I've never seen him come up with like a loose ball or any of these types of things. And like, obviously we're not asking Paul George to do this, that I think he's here to be like a key scorer, a guy that is more in that role, that there will be the dirty work guys on this team, as he likes to put it. But I do think like the Tobias Harris experience was brutal here.